everybody, welcome back to The Hunt. I'm Trish Hunt, your host, and I'm so excited to have our next guest with us today. His name is Mike Hess. He is the co-founder, proprietor, and chief brewing officer of Mike Hess Brewing Company. Mike, welcome to the show. It's so good to see you.
Thanks, great to see you.
Thank you. So let's start out, co-founder.
Yeah. My wife Linda and I started the company in 2010 after like about 3 or 4 months of exploration starting in late 2009 and then going through all the paperwork drill and finding a space and putting a brewery together.
But really it starts, this is a fascinating, I think, story because you were in the financial services industry.
Right.
And you had a hobby and a passion for brewing beer out of your garage.
Yep.
Right? And then what happened? Tell us about that.
Well, it was the garage and the kitchen and one of the restrooms in the house. And
so she's trying to make spaghetti and you're making pasta?
Yeah, I got the yeast stir plate going on the counter, and she's always like, "What's that clicking sound?" And it's the stir plate, propping up yeast and things like that. It was a hobby that had gone wild. I started brewing in 1995. And in 2009, I'd read this article in the Wall Street Journal about doing this thing called nano brewing, which was this new concept that nobody had ever heard of, except for apparently the Wall Street Journal and a few people up in like Portland. And that's what the article was talking about. And it was the idea that you could open up a side gig, side hustle brewery, be a one-man band, and have a commercial enterprise. And I, as an entrepreneur, I thought this is really a cool proof of concept type of thing that I could do. I was making a lot of beer. As a home brewer, I was pretty prolific, let's say, home brewer.
Okay.
And
so what was happening? Were your friends coming over, taste testing?
Yeah, all my friends.
Okay.
We owned a house out in East County. It was a big place. We could host 100 people easily at the house. And out in the garage, I had a converted cooler that held I don't know, anywhere from like 6 to 10 beers on at a time.
Oh
and then I also was brewing for a group that I belonged to through my church that was called Hoagies and Stogies, where these fellas would get together and we'd debate some theological topic, and most of the topics were, to me, seemed like two sides of the same coin, where I was like, I don't really understand the difference between these, but there's great food and my beer was there, and so I'd have this opportunity to drain the tanks frequently so I could keep brewing. Because I think that's one of the hardest parts being a home brewer, is like where you can get rid of all this beer, especially when you're making that much.
No, absolutely. And so it's self-taught.
Self-taught, yeah. This was, pre-internet, so I got the standard Charlie Papazian book, like The Complete Joy of Home Brewing, and would talk to the fellas at the homebrew shop. I remember I started in Philly. I was stationed on a ship there, and I would go down there and have the guy try my beer and give me feedback, like why am I tasting this or smelling that, and just trial and error, and hundreds of batches later, maybe thousands, I don't know, we opened up the brewery.
Such a cool story. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is San Diego sometimes, so just for the viewers, we're broadcasting out of Carlsbad, California, and we're in San Diego, but it is often called the brewing capital of the country.
Yeah, craft beer capital. Yep.
So how has the industry changed from when you started, even in 95, to then 2008 and then beyond?
Well, in 95, homebrewing was not very long legal. I mean, in fact, in some states, Utah, for example, you still couldn't make beer at home back then. But when I got into the industry in 2009, 2010, across the country, there was only about 1,500 breweries total. Now there's there's over 10,000 today. California, there were probably 300 breweries. Now there's 11 or 1,200 breweries. So the popularity of homebrewing and the rise of craft beer has caused this, this hockey stick of participants coming into the marketplace, and it's changed a lot just in the last 12 years. We were the 33rd brewery in San Diego County. There's 165 now, and back then everybody knew each other because there was only 30 of us, let's say, right? We all knew everybody else's setup. We all knew the brewers or the owners. And now there's so many people who say, have you been to such and such and such and such? And I'm like, I haven't even heard of those guys. I had a guy ask me last night if I knew this brewery up in Vista. I'd never heard of them.
Oh my gosh, but it's small industry, you guys support each other, help each other out?
Yeah, we do have, we have a local guild in San Diego, and we also have a state guild that really protects the industry. Their job is to, at least at the state level, is to protect our rights legally as brewers. And California, it turns out, it's a great state to make beer in. We have lots of privileges that other states don't have in terms of self-distribution, selling pints, selling beer to go, selling six-packs out of our own brewery locations. So the retail end of our business is very well protected. We also have the right to self-distribute if you so choose.
Oh, great.
So you don't have to sign up with one of the big distributors or even a small distributor if you wanted to self-distribute. It adds a whole layer of complexity to the business if you go that route, but you have the rights to do that here in this state.
And so let's talk about your locations, because in COVID and how maybe COVID impacted the business model at all. But I think with the flexibility that California offers, you had a lot of different ways to distribute and market.
Yeah, California was one of the first that allowed us to do like pints to go. So, I mean, we did that immediately. Well, not immediately. I would say that at the beginning of COVID, it was actually quite frightening. I thought that maybe we were going to lose the business after 10 years of effort. And we had at the time probably 75 employees on the team. And we kind of had seen it coming. So I'd had all my department managers do kind of like rack and stack employees, like, who's mission critical. And who is it that we can, if we have to go down this path of like sheltering in place, who do we say, okay, we're gonna have to go on unemployment? So we had that all prepped, and so when it actually happened in mid-March, we actually enacted this plan that I had never thought we would have to. There's been some really difficult times through COVID in the brewing industry for sure. But we closed down for about a week, and then during that week, I realized that there was this hand sanitizer shortage, and we pivoted into hand sanitizer. And that saved the business.
True entrepreneurialism.
Yeah,
at
for
work.
sure.
My goodness.
The first question you ask is how much cash do we have on hand and how long can we go?
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
And this was before rent deferments and all those types of things, which we actually never ended up taking. And within about 2 weeks of essentially furloughing 80% of the staff, we brought everybody back.
Oh my God.
And did hand sanitizer out of our
amazing.
tasting room in North Park. Yeah.
Gosh, what a great story.
It was pretty wild. But then once California started to see a little bit of daylight, and they did pass some emergency measures to allow us to sell beer to go, essentially, like you could even sell a glass of beer to go out the door, those types of things. And we have lots of great outdoor spaces. We like outdoor spaces, and those actually work to our advantage, so we were able to make it through.
How many locations do you guys have now?
We have 6 locations and 1 underway. So
Awesome.
Our model has definitely changed. The model when I opened up the business in 2010, or at least what I thought, well, in 2010 when I opened the model was we're going to be a nano brewery. We had no designs and never growing outside of our 800 square foot and me making beer 50 gallons at a time. But that just proved unsustainable. I mean, from a proof of concept standpoint, could you do it? Yeah. Could you make some money? Sure, a little bit. Probably not enough to live in San Diego and buy a home here. But it was fun. And it was about a year into it, we decided, Linda and I, that we were going to try and scale up and do what we did. But the idea was that we were going to build a big brewery and then distribute, at least on the western states. But that model changed as all these breweries came into market. And it was much harder to be relevant in a market like Denver or Phoenix when Denver and Phoenix had great breweries of their own.
So what do you think makes Hess Brewery special? Like how have you been able to sustain over such a long period of time?
I think, we are making great beer. I mean, that's evidenced by, the awards that we've garnered. We've got 2 World Beer Cups and many, many awards from San Diego and the Los Angeles Beer Competition. So we've got that part down. I don't want to say down, but I mean, we do a good job at making a great product. But we have an excellent team. I mean, and we hire a lot on culture. In 2012, when we were hiring for our first big build out, the North Park Brewery, we would talk to people about what they knew about beer. You'd say, tell us the difference between an ale and a lager, and what are your favorite hops, and those types of things. And now we don't care about that. We care about people who are good people. So we
talk. So you're a nice place to work too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure innovation is a big thing, like constantly coming out with new
Yeah,
brews.
well, that's the name of the game in the beer world. You got to always have something new on draft, and we have the capacity in the brewers to be able to continue to keep the taps fresh. So if somebody comes in, regularly, let's say they come in every couple of few weeks, there's probably something new on there besides their standbys that they love. So
fun. And now you also parlayed into festivals. You have Hess Fest coming up, right? So you want to talk about that?
Sure. Hess Fest is our anniversary party. We started it once we opened up the North Park location because we had now a spot to do it in. And it originally started as a beer festival, which was the standard San Diego thing where you get 20 or 30 craft breweries and you had a stage for some music and then vendors selling, wares and foods and things like that. And we always have had it with a philanthropic stance. So we're raising money for some charity or charities. Recently, though, and I think the way it's going to look going forward is that instead of it being a beer festival with music, it's a music festival with our beer, because we now can draw enough people to sell the tickets along with the bands.
Yeah, I actually had the pleasure of going to one, I think last summer, so it was great. Yeah. So tell the viewers where they can find you and more about Hess Brewing.
Well, we're on all the socials, of course. So Mike Hess Brewing is our handle for Twitter. It's our Instagram. It's our Facebook. All that stuff. Website MikeHessBrewing.com, and we've got 5 locations here in the San Diego area and 1 up in the Bay Area.
Awesome, great. Thanks, Mike. Great to have you.
Thank
We'll
you.
be back in a minute.